Ladies and gentlemen, welcome everybody to the Build.well.being 2022. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to see you here at the St. Pölten University of Applied Sciences. A very warm welcome to all of you here in this room. A very warm welcome also to everybody watching from home. We have, I think, about half the audience is watching our live stream on YouTube. The other half is right here. Welcome to everybody. Of course, everybody will have the opportunity to ask questions. So if you're watching online, just use the chat and your questions will be forwarded to me. We have a lot to look forward to this afternoon, and I'm really happy to be here. My name is Florian Eigner. I'm an author and science journalist, and I will guide you through this afternoon today. Some of you already joined the morning workshops. I'm sure this was already very interesting. We want to thank especially three organizations who made this possible. The Europaregion Donau-Moldau, so the European region, Danube and the Moldau River. Direne, an international research project on digital rehabilitation, and of course, our host here, St. Pölten University of Applied Sciences. Thanks also to all the partners who supported this event. You can see them here. And thanks also especially to Laura Fischer from St. Pölten University of Applied Sciences, who did a lot of work to make this possible. She's working in marketing and communications and spent a lot of effort preparing for this conference. Thanks also, of course, to Jakob Doppler, the mastermind behind this event. Well, I do not have to explain to this audience how important digital technologies are in healthcare, because everybody already knows that. I think this is a topic that everybody in the whole world realizes that it's what we have to do now, that it's what will define the future of healthcare. Well, I am old enough to remember people talking about the digital revolution. Today, when we talk about the digital revolution, we have to ask, well, which one? Because there are many digital revolutions and they are overlapping and going on. And the internet became important in the 90s, and today our internet obviously is completely different. And just think how the pandemic would have played out if it had happened in the 80s or 90s without the opportunities of meeting people online, without home office, without things like that. So already here we see how digital technologies influence our life and influence healthcare, and that's what we want to talk about today. And we'll have a very, very broad range of topics, ranging from data-driven science to robots, so there's plenty to look forward to. To start us off today, there is probably no better person than Andrea Gdolski. She's a medical doctor. She is a former Minister of Health of the Republic of Austria. She's a health IT consultant, and she's the head of the Department of Health here at St. Pölten University of Applied Sciences. I would kindly ask her to start this conference. Thank you.
Good afternoon, colleagues and distinguished guests. Good afternoon at the stream. I'm very happy to welcome you all here at the University of Applied Sciences in St. Pölten today. My name is Andrea Gdolski. I'm the head of the Department of Health and the Institute of Health Sciences here at the University for Applied Sciences in St. Pölten. Health has been on everybody's lips since the pandemic started in 2020, and I'm glad that here in St. Pölten we have the opportunity to see health not only with the eyes of diagnosis and treatment of all these diseases, but the focus is also on the prevention and on rehabilitation. These two topics are particularly hardly manageable today without digital support. And therefore, I'm pleased that we are able to implement comprehensive teaching and research in the field of health together with the Department of Media Technology. And this is what our students can have as an add-on, more or less. IT in healthcare brings people a lot of relief, but of course, it also means that there are challenges to be overcome. Let us think of data security, but also the question of making a decision as a medical doctor without having a patient in front of you. Laws will also have to be adapted, and ethical discussions will have to be held. However, the development is going in the right direction. And the last 2 years in particular have shown us what is possible. E-medication, e-prescription, sick leave via telephone, physical therapy via screen. Here at the University of Applied Sciences, our researchers and students work on solutions that make it easier for people to stay healthy and get healthy again. I wish you all, during the next hours, exciting insights into our work, but also into the trends of the coming years and associated necessary changes in the framework conditions. Thank you all and have a pleasant afternoon.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Kudolski. Then we're going to move on to already our keynote address, which I'm very much looking forward to as well. I would like to welcome Marius Mainz. He's the Strategy and Growth Manager at Hello Better, a company which actually started as a university spin-off, if I remember that correctly, and is now one of the leading providers of digital therapeutics for mental health in the world. So maybe a hint to the students we have here, that's how it can go. The things that you start, the ideas that you have right now, well, if you're lucky, you end up like this. Please.
So, first of all, thank you very much for the warm welcome. Welcome, everybody. My name is Marius Mainz. As earlier said, I work for Hello Better. Hello Better started as a university spin-off in 2015 and is now a company with more than 100 employees. And it's actually the company with the most DiGA, so digital health applications in Germany that have been reviewed and are effective and are available on prescription for 73 million people in Germany with statutory health insurance. So the German DiGA model was the first model worldwide implementing digital therapeutics into the standard of care. And that's basically the topic for today. And I want to give you some insights on how we have done so far. And the first DiGA was approved in October 2020. So it's been a little bit over 1.5 years now. But before I will talk about DiGA and what's happening in Germany and how other countries can learn from that, I have some exciting news to share actually from the UK. And it's not Tom Cruise here on the right, but it's actually the British, The Times, 2 or 3 weeks old, with this headline on the front page. Doctors to give sleep app rather than pills. So the company behind this is Big Health, and the app is called Sleepio. And actually, the app has proven to be more effective and cheaper than sleep pills. And now general practitioners in the UK use this app in the standard of care as a first-line treatment to help patients with insomnia. So it's not always Germany. There are other ways and other basically approaches to bring digital therapeutics into the standard of care, into the patient's hands. But Germany was basically, so to say, the first. We have the UK with several, with this approach. And we also have France, which is going to replicate the German DiGA model. We're waiting for new information on that in the coming weeks. But before I'm talking about why the German DiGA model is so interesting and what we have learned so far, I want to give you a perspective from our view, basically, from the mental health world, why we need digital therapeutics and why it's not a nice feature to have, but actually a necessity to bring into the standard of care. And so as you can see here, 1 billion people worldwide suffer from a mental health disorder. 10% get the right care by a psychotherapist or a psychiatrist. 30% receive care by a general practitioner. And this is a good start, but still this person is a general practitioner and not a therapist. And then we have 60% of people who remain undiagnosed and uncared for. And you have to ask yourself why. And there are several reasons, but often from the first onset of symptoms to actively reaching out for care and getting a first contact appointment, it takes several years for people with a mental health disorder. And there are two main barriers. The first one is attitudinal, meaning stigma, shame, the personal needs of people. The WHO has done a survey on this, asking people with a mental health disorder, what is the main barrier for you not seeking help and going to a professional? Almost two-thirds said, I want to deal with my problems on my own first before reaching out. So what does it tell you? Even if you have all the therapists in the world in our healthcare system, all the resources from a structural point, you won't reach those two-thirds of people with a mental health disorder because you need to empower them first to understand their situation, give them the right tools to then reach out for help. So the structural barriers, I think this is well known. Not enough licensed therapists in Germany. We do have enough therapists, but not enough licensees, so to say, so that they can get paid by the statutory health insurance or the public health insurance. This is why we have at the moment 5 months of waiting time to get treatment, to start therapy. I mean, imagine breaking your leg and waiting 5 months to get treatment. So one reason, by the way, you could say we provide the health system with enough money, we hire enough therapists, give out enough licenses, build low threshold access to therapy, for example. But there's one main problem in healthcare, and it's often called the cost disease, and it's said to be incurable. But what you see here is Germany and Austria, who both doubled their healthcare spending within the last 20 years. And it's not going to be better in the future because there are not really, medicine is still focused on human labor. It should be, obviously. Medicine is always bound to the human touch. But you have to ask yourself, where are processes and therapies that you can digitize? Because once you are able to digitize a human service, you can scale it and you can distribute it at a much lower cost. And so coming now to DIGA. As I said, DIGA is a digital health application which have been reviewed by the Federal Institute for Drugs and Medical Devices. So they are medical 1 or 2A device, so low risk. They have proven to be effective in clinical studies. They have high data protection and data security standards that are even above or beyond the GDPR. So what I want to highlight here, DIGAs are, so to say, the most regulated digital products that you can find on the market. So if someone is asking me, so where do I find health apps, that are effective and that are good to use? I always point them to the DIGA registry in Germany because those have been tested, reviewed, and many of them have already the final evidence. And I'm coming to that a little bit later. So how do you get this DIGA, a digital therapeutic, a digital therapy on prescription? First of all, you can reach out to your general practitioner or your psychotherapist. ICD-10 diagnosis is needed to get access. And then in Germany, I heard the term e-prescription. It's like, we're working on it. We don't have it yet. And so you get these cute little red prescription papers, which you then have to send in a digital world on paper to your health insurance company. So Then the health insurance company is getting back to you and is providing you with a code, like a number, like code, which then you can use to open the DIGA and access it for free. And in the end, the DIGA company or the DIGA manufacturer gets paid by the health insurance directly. So there's no out-of-pocket spending for the patient, which is actually pretty great. From all of those prescriptions that has been made so far, 90% follow the first path, so to say. So see a professional, get the diagnosis, get the prescription, get access to DIGA. The second way, so around 10%, is actually a pretty smart way because it's shorter. And I'll give you an example. So you already have a diagnosis. Let's say, let's assume I'm a chronic pain patient. I got diagnosed 3 years ago. Why should I go to my therapist or to my doctor to get, again, a diagnosis? I already have it. Why should I get this nice little red paper prescription? And so I can directly reach out to my health insurance company and say, you guys know I have this diagnosis, please provide me with access. And so then the health insurance company do that. And if you think about the second way, it's actually quite interesting because this path, this journey is done without like a prescriber, so to say. So there's no doctor, no therapist involved in the second way directly. Of course, in the past, there was the diagnosis. And so this is the first way a patient gets a medical treatment without direct contact of a medical provider, like a doctor or therapist. And so here you can actually see on the left side, so far we have 31 digital health applications that are listed and approved by the Federal Institute. And the dominating field is mental health. And that's not surprising because in the past, the mental health field has a high prevalence in different indications. Research has focused a lot on cognitive behavioral therapy and digitizing it. So we have several of those DIGAs in the mental health space. Hello Better is a good example. At the moment, we have 5 of our products listed, and these can be, for example, chronic pain, diabetes and depression, stress and burnout, to name a few. So we have the preliminary and the permanent listing. What does it mean? If you already, for example, Hello Better is a great example. We are a university spin-off, so we have conducted lots of studies before entering the market, basically. So we were pretty confident that when we apply, we will be permanently listed because we have the evidence in place. We know that our products are effective and can help people. But there are other companies who may be, for example, much younger, and so they don't have this evidence base yet. So they can apply as a preliminary DIGA, and then they have 1 year time to conduct a study showing the evidence. So obviously they have to show some initial data and data analysis, but then have 1 year of showing the final proof of evidence. And if they don't show it, if they're not able to show it within 1 year, they get excluded. And so this happened already now 2 times. It's like, I think it's 4 or 5 weeks ago this happened. So it actually were 33 DIGAs approved, 2 excluded now. And when you look at the prescription numbers, this is quite interesting as well. I'm showing you here the numbers from the first year. As I said, we are now like 1 year, 8 months into the game already. The reason I can't present you more recent numbers is actually because all the data is siloed at the different stakeholders. So insurance companies have some of the data, how many prescriptions they paid for. The DIGA companies have their prescription numbers. And so we always have to wait, basically, for the leading association of the public health insurance companies to provide us with a report. And so this report, that's the most recent one, showing you the prescription numbers from the first year. And you see here, 40,000 were redeemed. What does it mean? We actually had 50,000 prescriptions, which is a quite low number if you think about it. In Germany, you have 73 million people who have free access to those DIGAs. And then from those 50,000, 40,000 were only redeemed. So 80%, 20% are lost. The reason, obviously, no one really knows. Maybe forgotten, maybe I went on holiday and then it wasn't important anymore. Anyway, 40,000. And you see, in the first year, we had 20 DIGAs. You see the most successful on here. And the last point, or the last bar with others, 12 DIGA, it shows that there are many DIGA who have not had not a big success with getting those prescription numbers up. And the question is why. And so there are two main reasons. First of all, we're talking about treatment indications. So the prevalence is an important point. How big is your market as a DIGA manufacturer? And second of all, your distribution capabilities. Because this is something that is completely underestimated and is extremely important to bring the products that you have and you have proven that they are successful, that they are effective, they need to be put in the patient's hands. Looking at the top 5 DIGA companies and their prescriptions, we can see that they are responsible for 81 of all prescriptions. So within the first year, and I'm going through some different stakeholders, the prescribers, the patients, and I'm talking a little bit about the DIGA companies. The prescribers, first of all, 4% in the first year have only, 4% of doctors have only prescribed DIGAs. So the critics say, this is way too low, DIGA is a complete failure. But I'm asking, is it? Weren't there other important topics in the last 2 years, like COVID, vaccination? Especially in Germany, the term digital is frightening doctors because they had so bad experiences with it. It's not even their fault. So you have to explain them a digital tool, and it takes time. So you could say 4% is actually quite bad. But if you look at the openness of doctors and also therapists, which is 81%, they say, yeah, I imagine I would use it, I prescribe it, I've tested it, or I want to test it, shows that there's potential, there's room to grow, and that's why I'm staying quite positive for the future, that even though 4% only started, I think it's a great start. There's, like I said, a lot of room for improvement, but we're on the right way. Interesting enough was actually the question, what are the main barriers for you to prescribing the DIGA, or why are you hesitating to prescribe it? And so first answer with the most doctors said, data protection, effectiveness, and getting access to a test account. So as I have shown earlier, the DIGAs are one of the most regulated products. So data protection is in place even beyond the GDPR. Effectiveness, most of them, I made the comparison between preliminary and permanent listed. So the permanent listed ones have already shown evidence and their effectiveness. So what we're seeing here is basically the need to educate the market. Obviously, we have to educate the patient and inform them that DIGA exists and how they get access. But we also need to include the prescribers and explain them this product. Coming to patients, that's actually quite interesting. We had almost 70% of the users within the first year were women. And then thinking about the age, you would assume that the age groups or the average age is much younger, let's say 25. But the reason why we're seeing here 46 years average of age is basically, it has not so much to do with basically using a digital tool, but about the indication and the disease. So basically age is not an indicator, but like the disease itself. And the adoption rate. 62% said the DIGA rather help me or help me. And so I think this is, again, the critics would say this is not enough. But I think if you have a treatment that has proven to be effective and 2/3 say it helps me, I would call it a success. So you have 84% users who use it once a week and 86% who said I'm likely to use another DIGA in the future. So one of the hot topics at the moment in Germany and in the DIGA landscape is actually price. how much should a DIGA cost? And you see the price range, 119 to 718 euros. There were at the moment 4 price negotiations that were finalized. And so I told you in the first year, DIGA companies can set their own prices. So why did the government decide to do this? So they can have an easy start, basically, increase adoption, because if the prices were too low, no one would actually apply to get DIGA listed. And so those 4 price negotiations, I'm going to show you the results of it. You can think about it as the DIGA manufacturer is having this discussion with the leading association of the public health insurance companies. And so if they don't agree on a price after several meetings, the price gets set by an arbitration panel. And so what we're seeing now, we had 4 DIGAs, and in all 4 cases, no agreement was made. So in all 4 cases, the arbitration panel had to set the price. And what you're seeing here, it's actually, from a DIGA manufacturer perspective, this is brutal. Getting price cuts from 29 to 67%, you have to really think about it, because there is a risk that this new price makes you not successful anymore in the future, that your revenue is not enough, basically, to stay in the game. First of all, it shows where DIGA prices are heading. And no one really knows, basically, what the right price is. There are different methods that you can use to calculate the prevalence, the impact you're having, your evidence, and so on. All I want to highlight here is we are learning every day, every week. It's a living model, basically. And so, who knows? Maybe this price will increase. Maybe it will go down. And so it's exciting to watch the next price negotiations. And so coming slowly to an end, the successful DIGA factors that you should consider as a DIGA company, also basically as a patient as well, as a healthcare system, maybe if you want to integrate such a model into your country, is first of all, adoption. Approval and reimbursement don't guarantee adoption. I think that's what we've seen. Many more younger startups, they focus so much on the application and spend so many resources, actually, that once they got listed, they had no clue what to do. How do I contact the patient? How do I contact doctors and prescribers? And so this is actually what you really have to think about. What do I do after I get listed? Am I going to do the distribution basically on my own? Do I do smart partnerships with distribution partners, with pharma, for example? So there are several ways to do this. In general, adoption needs time. So this is the DIGA model. We're talking about healthcare. Healthcare is not fast. So this is not your typical Silicon Valley 10x hypergrowth project you have here. And is it a problem that it's not growing as quickly as other technologies or other models? I don't think so. Education and financial incentives. I mentioned earlier the barriers for prescribers, that they need to be educated. So you need to learn their language and explain them what may be obvious to you. So effectiveness, data protection, this is one important part. You also have to do this with patients as well. And then the financial incentive. In Germany, a prescriber gets 2 euros when prescribing a DIGA. So this is not a financial incentive. If you implement it basically in another country, you could think about maybe raising this financial incentive, and so you could increase the adoption. Price development and business model. I said it on the slide before. We need to see where the DIGA price is heading and what this means. It is basically, as I said, we're learning every day, every week. There will be a lot of consolidation over the next weeks and months, because when all those new price negotiations happen, some DIGA companies won't make it. What I want to highlight is that the cost, first of all, of developing a technical product is quite high. And so you also have to think about doing the randomized controlled trial. So doing studies is extremely expensive. And you have a medical device, so it meets a lot of other requirements where you really have to keep that in mind, that this product can't cost 99 cents in the App Store. It's not a health app. It's a digital therapeutic. And last but not least, providing value. DIGA is one important pillar of the future of healthcare systems. So it's scalable, it's effective, and it has a high quality, so it's highly regulated. But it's only one part. So the future value of digital health applications in healthcare systems lies in the interaction with other technologies and products. That's it from my side. Thank you very much, and happy to talk about DIGA later on. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just stick around for a second. We can, I think, take one or two questions. Is there anybody here with an urgent question right now? We have a microphone going around, so just raise your hand if you... Yeah.
Thanks very much for the interesting talk. I'm wondering, when I look at the considering the price negotiations, when I look at the arbitration results, you have basically 200 euros plus minus 10, 20% for every single product, the four examples that you showed, whereas the manufacturers themselves had very different estimates. So is it simply that there's a perception that a digital product should just cost the same no matter how you come to it, because it's not, you know, it's intangible in that sense, and so all the research that goes into it doesn't quite count in a way. Whereas if you're the one making it, then it's clear that there's a big difference between one product and another.
Yeah, it's a really complicated topic. I think one of the first questions you can ask, so why did those companies set their prices for the first year that high? So there are some assumptions that they make. And so it's kind of, I can't really speak for those companies, but they may have their reasons for the first year. And so it kind of depends, and I think that is where we're coming to the topic of real-world data, actually, where this whole model is going to develop, hopefully in the future, that DIGA companies are able to use their data and show more evidence that which kind of impact they are having, and so that this real-world evidence then can support claims, for example, that a DIGA can cost 300, 400, or even 500, or if they can't basically show evidence for their claims when it comes to cost effectiveness, that a DIGA has to cost 50 euros maybe, or 20.
Okay, we have one question from the chat. It's about adherence. Do you have any feeling how adherent patients are to the app, or does maybe the app also help to improve adherence to medication?
So I can just talk from a better perspective what we are seeing when it comes to adherence. So a great comparison is often, if you have prevention courses, so which are not DIGA, because DIGA is only treatment, but prevention courses, there is often other companies have like the same challenge. Prevention, it's hard. Adherence in general is hard to keep up if you're doing something preventive. But what we're seeing with the DIGAs, people are actually using it. And often, even more patients who suffer for several weeks, months, and years, they have a high motivation to actually finish that course. So adherence is definitely an interesting topic. From our perspective, we see treatment courses have much, much higher adherence than prevention courses.
Thank you very much. Thanks again for this really great talk, and let's move on to the next. Well, we already heard about how important information transfer is when it comes to, for example, teaching medical doctors that these apps exist and actually can do some good. And that takes us actually into the next topic already, educating the digital rehabilitation professional of the future. So I would like to welcome Kaisa Lella from JAMK, University of Applied Sciences in Finland, Patricia Renner, junior researcher here in St. Pölten, and Immaculada Riquelme Agulló from the University of the Balearic Islands, telling us about education of digital rehabilitation. Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon for everyone here in this beautiful auditorium, and also for you online. So, competence for the new era of user-driven digital rehabilitation, DRNA in short, is the Erasmus-funded 2-year project, which is now in its midway. And we are working in that project together with our 4 partners from different kind of universities all around Europe. So we from JAMK, University of Applied Science from Finland, Jyväskylä, are leading this project, and we have a multidisciplinary partners from University of Health Science, Bochum, Germany, University of West Attica, Athens, Greece, University of Balearic Island from Mallorca, Spain, and of course this beautiful University of Applied Science, St. Pölten, here from Austria. And together with this team, our aim is to enhance and increase the resilience of rehabilitation system by improving and developing of digital rehabilitation competencies among the teachers, students and working life professionals. So our context is to enhance the teaching and training opportunities relating these digital rehabilitation solutions. And here are our specific objectives. So improving, developing knowledge about the digital rehabilitation, but also increasing learning opportunities. And probably the term digital rehabilitation is not familiar for all of you because it's not very well defined, at least it wasn't earlier. But together with our team, we have defined this term, and this is probably still on progress, but at the current, what we are meaning about this digital rehabilitation is the use of digital technologies as part of the rehabilitation process. And the digital technology can be used by professionals or by the end user or clients. And the digital rehabilitation technologies are also used in different phases during the rehabilitation process, so in every different phase. So, and the aim of this digital rehabilitation is to optimize functioning and reduce disability, as well as empowering the clients. In this project, in the beginning of this project, we identified megatrends and future visions, what is coming on the field of digital rehabilitation. And we found out that we are AR, robotics, but also different kind of AI-based solutions are identified as a megatrends, but also there are a lot of expectations how these digital solutions can modify the rehabilitation and rehabilitation processes. But something what was very highly emphasizes in our results, which we received from literature and also focus groups, was that there are going to be needed some kind of integrative platforms where we can combine the data from different kind of digital rehabilitation solutions. So now I hand over this to Inma, please.
Thank you. Where the
Okay. At the same time that we were trying to define the megatrends in digital rehabilitation,
Just to put it back.
okay. We were interested in knowing the factors affecting the use of digital rehabilitation. Why are we using them or not? And we made a research in the literature, and we made focus groups with professional teachers, students, to identify facilitators and barriers. I would like to highlight that one of the barriers we found were that professionals and students had identified the necessity of having training on digital competencies, which is the main goal of the DIREM project. Which competencies we have and which competencies are needed? We made also some more discussion groups, some questionnaires, and we had the good surprise that we knew a lot about how to implement digital tools, but still we were lacking or had the necessity to improve some specific competencies, mostly about our knowledge about policies, legislation, ethical issues, and more specific ones like developing content, how to solve technical problems, and how to communicate through these digital tools, which can be a bit different than in a face-to-face environment. And how are we going to do it? How are we going to work these competencies? This is something that Patricia will tell us.
So, thank you very much, Imna. Yeah, my colleague has just presented a few competences which are necessary for digital rehabilitation. I will now talk about selected findings on which type of content is needed in order to teach these competences and how they can be taught. First of all, the first thing is adapting the healthcare process to different digital settings. This requires content on telemedical development, on the creation of digital content, knowledge in the application of technology to acquire technical expertise for digital rehabilitation. This includes obtaining the necessary data, the preliminary information for the patients, the medical presentation and findings of the patient, as well as the amnesis scheme documentation and so on. It is also important to focus on adapted interaction between service provider and service user. This includes designing different digital settings, methodological preparation, rules in the setting, advantages, limits, disadvantages, and knowledge of professional-client-professional relationship. In other words, knowledge of how to create a trusting, secure, professional-patient relationship for digital rehabilitation. In addition, content on professional development, the professional identity is important. This includes teaching interdisciplinarity, user experience and users' perspectives, reflective skills, interpersonal training, communication and empathy, stress management, ethical issues, and ethical awareness. Furthermore, communication skills and ethical awareness are necessary for the digital
a digital rehabilitation process. When it comes to teaching, we should therefore focus particularly on conversation techniques, such as talking in simple language, digital counseling techniques, and digital and non-verbal communication. The goal is to ensure that service users receive support and pedagogical guidance. And now the question arises, how should we teach this? 3 categories have emerged in our research in this regard. Firstly, via theory, using current scientific literature and specific literature on digital rehabilitation processes in conjunction with assignments on the literature and practical examples. It is also important to address concerns and take them seriously. Secondly, it is important to teach digital rehabilitation in a practical way, to practice it and to carry it out. This requires the provision and use of technology in the classroom. The third aspect is directly related to the practical exercises. We should teach digital rehabilitation using digital technology. This means that we need digitized, user-friendly, and aesthetically pleasing learning materials. We should also refer to social media and use videos or mobile devices in our teaching. But how should learning with mobile aspects should be designed? To do this, we should ensure usability and learner-centered content. This means ensuring accessibility for people with different diagnoses and of different age groups. In order to reach as many groups of service users as possible, it is important for them to feel confident. Learning with mobile aspects should be easy to understand, in other words, not too complicated, and should therefore use easy language combined with interactive tools and different information. To this end, the learning materials should be available in various formats such as written texts, in videos, via social media, podcasts, and so on. These different learning materials are necessary to enable a smooth transition from offline to online. Now we have told you a lot about the empirical research, but in addition, a written survey was conducted with teachers from the partner organization on the question of which tools they currently use in their teaching to impart this content in a mobile way using mobile devices. We found that while certain tools are already in use, there is still potential for using big data and AI in teaching in future, for example, chatbot. Based on all the above-mentioned surveys and the resulting findings, we have developed a handbook for teachers, which my colleague Kaiser, our project leader, will present you in more detail now.
Thank you, Patricia. So, as Patricia mentions, we are now gathering all of those data, what we have received so far, to the handbook for teachers in order to improve teaching methods and ways of teaching digital rehabilitation solutions. And you can find our results from our web pages, which you can see the link there. And also the handbook will be published in that web page completely when it's finished during this month. And next autumn we will be piloting a study module which we will be designing based on these earlier results, and spring 2023 that study module will be published openly as a 2ECT credit MOOC. So please go and see more information from our web pages and follow us in Twitter or Facebook. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your talk. Well, I think we have time for 1 or 2 questions. We're a little bit over time, but it's not too bad. So are there urgent questions right now? Okay, then maybe a question from me. could you say one or two sentences about the target groups? Because there are many different stakeholders in this field, professionals from all different directions. So whom exactly do you see as your target audience here? Health professionals, doctors prescribing stuff?
Yeah, great question. So the target group is the rehabilitation teachers, students, and working life professionals. And when we're talking about the rehabilitation, we mean it's very widely. So all the professionals and teachers from physiotherapy to social work, and who also health promotion. So there may be also some doctors and medical professionals or nurses, but basically the target group is the rehabilitation staff, teachers and students, so those therapeutics and all the stuff associated for that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. So if there are no further questions, let's move on to the next speaker, who is Thomas Jokole, senior researcher at the University of West Bohemia in Pilsen. And he is going to tell us about research innovations in prosthetics with a focus on 3D printing, a topic I would not want to miss at an event like this. Please.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Can I ask you, is there any presenter?
That's this here, yes.
Okay. Sorry. I'm really proud that I can present the research project that I'm leading, because this project is in cooperation of two universities, University of West Bohemia and University from Deggendorf, and we have also 4 company partners. And I will share my experience with the project, and also I will introduce how we will work, because the project is not in the end. We are in the middle of our process, so I will share partial results with you. Because we are working with new technology, we are developing in our interdisciplinary team our competencies for cooperation and for innovation process, and we are supporting the new type of industry for the future. So in this part, we are focusing on new methods of shaping and construction and 3D printing systems of external bed of myoelectric prostheses. And we are also focusing on the users and their needs. We are interdisciplinary team, so we have experts from prosthetic part, engineers from 3D printings, the colleagues from the design, and we are using the design thinking methodology into our process. So it's like inspiration, empathy, ideation, prototyping, and testing. Just for your better understanding, this is the short view of composition of myoprotheses. There is thumb bed, intervening parts, some kind of terminal device and control unit, and we are focusing on the external outer bed and also for cosmetic cover. On this slide, you can see the common manufacturing process, which is common for these days. It takes days. So the prosthesis expert need to focus on myosignals, location of sensors of patients. Then they are working with plastering, modeling. They manufacturing the prosthesis by lamination process, and they need to test the prosthesis with the patient. So it takes days and costs a lot of money. So our innovation is to find a way how we can use the 3D printing to have easy and fast reproduction of prosthesis. Then if we can product accuracy and get quick feedback and different design variation for the patients. On these slides, you can see the process, how we prepare the 3D printing. In the beginning, I can say just we need to collect the information and data, and then we can make the model like this. And when we print the 3D printing, it's also with this new design innovation. So each patient can have a little bit different design. And during these days, we are in the process of testing. So we can test FEM simulation fatigue test, also the pressure test, static pressure test, and influencing of UV radiation, sweating, humidity, and many others. We have only few results from our testing. First of all is test of pressure. And I can say that we passed the test if we compare the common prosthesis with the 3D printing prosthesis. It is nearly same. And also we also passed the fatigue test because the part of wings in the end of the prosthesis is really the key point on the prosthesis, because it's the patients are using the prosthesis twice a day, so they need to put on and put off the prosthesis every day, and the life balance of the prosthesis is approximately 4 years. So we have 6 partners: University of West Bohemia, Deggendorf Institute of Technology, Otto Bock, Prosthetic Pilsen, Otessit, and Fachklinik Osterhofen. And thank you for your attention, and I hope I hope that I can later share the results from the project with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Questions from the audience? Okay, yeah, there is one.
Do you use a special material? Do you use a special material for this 3D printing?
Yes, it's combination with glass. So we can test 2 different materials. One is with glass and another one is without.
Okay, any more questions? If this is not the case, then thanks again.
Thank you.
And we're moving on to the next talk. Well, now we have a series of students' pitches. Those will be projects which will be presented just in a few minutes. Student projects, many of which are conducted by students here from St. Pölten, but also students from other research institutions. If you have urgent questions about these projects, you're welcome to ask them, but there will always also be time afterwards during the break. The students' projects will be presented at the back of this room, so you will have time to take a few minutes and talk to the people directly, and so please do make use of this possibility. And I would like to welcome Katja Prüger and Tobias Döringer, who are going to talk about something which actually sounds like something taken from a fairy tale. Mirror, mirror on the wall, a mirror that you can talk to. That's something we've heard about. Let's see how reality is holding up against the fairy tale here.
Mirror, mirror on the wall, who has the brightest smile of them all?
Imagine, it's a beautiful day, you're smiling into your mirror, but the smile doesn't come back. That's how patients with Parkinson's disease feel sometimes.
Good afternoon. My name is Katja Prüger, and this is my colleague Tobias Döringer, and we are going to present you our digital healthcare project Mireha in the following minutes. More than 6 million people worldwide suffer from Parkinson's disease. Parkinson's disease is a disease with its widely known 4 cardinal symptoms: slowness of movement, involuntary shaking of the body, stiffness of the muscles, and postural instability. But also one very important symptom, which is not always in people's mind, is hypomimia. That means that the patients are not able to embody their emotions and feelings through facial expression. This impairment can lead to misunderstandings and frustration for the affected patients, but also for the family and friends. Social rejection and the reduction of quality of life are the results. And now you wonder how our mirror could help those patients.
And the answer you will get in the following minutes. Speech therapy and the training of facial muscles. Speech therapy and the training of facial muscles is one possibility to face these problems. Together with a speech therapist, training the facial expression can be practiced in front of a mirror. It is very important to train high frequently and with a repetitive content. To increase the therapy frequency, training in the home setting is recommended additionally to the therapy setting. To encourage these goals, technology-supported speech therapy could be a beneficial and future-oriented solution. To reach these goals, we created Mireha, our smart mirror. With Mireha, we invented a smart mirror for health issues. The mirror interacts with you and motivates you to increase the training frequency. It shows training videos, explains the exercises, and gives visual and auditive feedback. All of it while training is included into your daily bathroom routine. Additionally, you're guided through daily routines like brushing your teeth or stretching your neck as a preparation for the mimic exercises. The implemented combination of augmented reality and gamification makes the therapy more fun and also improves training frequency, motivation, and therapy compliance. With only 6 buttons for handling, Mireha is very intuitive and easy to use for everyone. This is Mireha. This is our smart mirror for improving speech therapy for patients with Parkinson's disease. Thank you very much for your attention, and we would be happy to invite you to our booth, answer your questions, and present you our prototype. Show us your smile in the mirror.
Thank you very much. So you really have the mirror here.
Yes, it's over there.
The mirror is in the background.
Okay, yes, so you shouldn't miss that in the break. I'm definitely going to check this out. Thank you very much. Okay, then we'll move on to the next talk. Julia Daxenpichler and Patrick Major will be talking about a completely different topic. If you are an employer, you're obviously interested in the health of your employees. That's a big topic, and a topic I think which is becoming more and more important. And the question is, how can an app help with that? Please.
Hello and good afternoon. I would like to invite you to join me in a short activation break. So please, firstly we start circling our shoulders. Then we stretch ourselves to the ceiling. Now, turn your head to the right side. If there is anybody, give your neighbor a short smile. Then turn your head to the left side. If there is anybody, give your neighbor a quick smile. And this is what our presentation is about. A tool for connecting people and activating them to participate in health-promoting activities. Let me tell you something about my working routine as an office employee. There are many hours of sitting just in front of a screen and no need at all to be physically active. Sometimes I work from home. On these days, all the communication goes by digital tools. When I'm at the office, it could be that my colleagues are working from home too. So even on those days, I just have very little social connections to them. And sometimes, I would just like to have a short talk to them in a personal way. Some of you may have recognized yourselves. But even if you're dealing with other problems at work, let me tell you some facts. Digitalization is fundamentally changing our working environment and allows us to work in flexible working conditions like working from home. Especially since the COVID-19 pandemic, more people began to work from home and connect digitally. But what we can also see is a decreased mental well-being caused by a lack of social interactions, and we can also see an increase in sick leaves due to mental illnesses since the past few years. Another problem is the general lack of physical activity in the Austrian population. Especially higher educated people tend to be less physically active during working hours. And that's why workplace health promotion plays a very important role in improving health and well-being in employees. There is evidence that these interventions do have positive impacts, and also there's an average return on investment of 2.7 euros for every invested euro. There is also evidence that social interactions and also work breaks are essential for well-being, and we have existing guidelines for a relaxing break organization. But now we have the problem that normal workplace health promotion programs does not meet the requirements of new flexible ways of working anymore. So we have to ask ourselves, how can workplace health promotion meet new requirements of flexible working conditions? But just wait for a second. I just got activated by my colleague, and maybe he has a solution for this problem.
Thank you, Julia, and good afternoon, everyone. So our aim with Actuate was to develop a tool which is both easy to use and also faces the new requirements of new ways of working, flexible working schedules and stuff like this. So I will show you how it works in a few examples. Here I've got Tina. She works in a big office building and is also a Pilates teacher. So she wants to help her colleagues in learning a bit about yoga and Pilates. What she's doing is she uses Actuate. She creates an activity called Yoga for Beginners, starting at 8 a.m., which is then available for all the other users to see. Then we've got her colleague Max. He also uses Actuate. What he does, he just takes out his phone and swipes to the right. This accepts the offer and also automatically adds a calendar entry in his integrated calendar in the app. Then we've got Katalin. He works in a hospital, and as you might know or can imagine, his shifts can sometimes be very exhausting and stressful, and he doesn't always know when he was able to take a break. So he decides he wants to use Actuate for a different reason. He decides he wants to go home from work and wants somebody to join him. So he creates an entry walking home from work at 4 p.m. and hopes maybe someone has time and can join him. Then we've got his colleague Peter. Unfortunately, he has to work until 5 p.m. and can't accept the offer. So what he does is swipe left. This declines the offer Katalin has provided in the app. Then we've got another offer, taking a coffee break at 3 p.m., just having a little talk, drinking some coffee. He manages to reschedule his time and swipes right again. This once again creates a calendar entry in his calendar. So why should we use Actuate? Actuate empowers the employees to create an health-promoting environment at their job themselves without too many restrictions. It's flexible to use. You can use it anywhere on your phone, and it's really easy with the well-known swiping interface. And also it focuses on the activity. So it's not about the connection and the relation between people like you and me or you and anyone else in this room who might use Actuate, but really focuses on the activity. So, do you feel activated? If yes, feel free to come to our booth, and we're very happy to talk to you.
So I think now we all feel activated enough for the final talk before the break, which will be given by Stefanie Pirzel and Dominik Edel. Again, it's about a topic that we have not really thought about yet today. Usually a waiting room is something which you just have to accept to be in until it starts. But there's also waiting room management which can help in that part of medical treatment. Please.
So, hi and welcome everyone. When we thought about what we wanted to do as our project, we thought about a situation that a lot of people all around the world have been in at least once, and I think you too. I'm talking about sitting in a hospital and waiting to be called. It's not really, to say at least, a pleasant experience. When you really need help or some sort of counseling, and all you can do is just sit there and listen for your name to be called through the hallway or look at some big screen monitor on the wall, anxiety really can build up easily. To tackle this problem, we envisioned and designed a digital solution, and we called it Varoma, which stands for a new waiting room management. The system consists of two parts, a wristband for the patients and a dashboard. The dashboard enables the medical staff to register new patients, to send a call wirelessly via the wristband, and to see an overview of all patients, the battery levels, and the waiting times. The wristband has an OLED screen and a vibration alert, so that even in a loud environment, you can reliably call a patient. It's lightweight, easily rechargeable and disinfectable, and so very well suited for high repetition use. Now let's have a look how it all works out in a clinical environment. As a patient, when you're at the check-in, instead of a normal ID band, you will receive a Varoma band. Then, just as usual, you can sit down in the waiting room and wait for your call. Or you can move around freely and be a bit active during your long waiting times. Or maybe even get a coffee or a snack in the hospital's cafe without the fear of missing your call. When the doctor or the nurse wants to call you, they go on the dashboard and send an individual call wirelessly via the wristband with which room you have to go next, so that your examination can start as soon as possible.
Thank you, Dominik, for your explanation. Now that we have seen how it works, let us now have a look at how you, as a health professional or as a patient, can benefit from using Varoma. So, as a patient, it will increase your safety by ensuring that you won't be forgotten. It will provide more privacy by avoiding calling or writing your name into a public space. It will ease the anxiety that builds up while sitting in the waiting room because you can move around freely. And it will create more comfort by giving you the possibility to use your waiting time more meaningful and less stressful. As a health professional, you will have a better overview of who is present in the waiting room because of the Varoma dashboard, which shows you all wristbands currently given out. You will have the possibility to improve your workflow because you don't have to call the patient personally. And therefore, you will have more time for the patient care and the clinical work.
Thanks, Jeffy, for the great insights, but I just got a call on my Varoma band, so I think it's time to wrap it up.
Oh, all right, then we want to say thank you to all of you and wish you a great afternoon.
Thank you very much. So maybe just one quick question. Does the band offer you any information as a patient, or does it just vibrate and signal when it's your turn? For example, when I'm a patient in hospital, I'm always eager to know, well, how long will it take? Do I have enough time to go to the cafe? Is there any way of telling the patient that he or she is, I don't know, 12th in line or something like that?
That's actually the most common feedback we got as a first question. Okay. And also the evidence of the most clinical studies show that this is what interests the patient the most. And since we're all medical professionals, we thought about it, and it's very hard to implement this. Sure. But we take a lot of thought in it, and maybe we can implement it in some point.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you very much for this presentation. Okay, so we've reached the end of our first part. We'll have 30 minutes break now, so make use of the time, get a coffee, talk to each other, and definitely do check out the project presentations. See you again here in half an hour at 2:50 approximately. Thank you. Welcome back to the second part of our event. So please join us again in this room. There were a few questions regarding the slides. And so I would like to remind you that all this event is being videotaped and will be available afterwards on the website. So if there is something you missed, if there is something you would like to watch again, if there is some information in some of the slides that you think you would like to take another look at, you will be able to do so. All right. So as the last people are coming back in, I hope you enjoyed your coffee and made use of the networking opportunities. Let me say something about the next talk. Well, we already had a connection to fairy tales with the mirror that gives you feedback. Now we are moving on with something with a connection to science fiction movies. You all know Exoskeletons and Iron Man, which is, sorry about the spoiler, not how exoskeletons really work, but we have somebody here today who does know how exoskeletons really work and how they can be very much in reality, very much useful for patients. So I would like to welcome Yuvesh Chandra Obiluk, who is going to tell us about design and usage of exoskeletons in healthcare. Please.
So welcome everybody to my talk today, which is the design and usage of exoskeletons in healthcare. And before I begin, a quick idea about the project who is working on this. The name of the project is FORCES, which comes from the German word Forschungskluster aktiver Exoskelette, which means a collaboration of different campuses working together to build an active exoskeleton for the lower limb. Well, first off, the definition of an exoskeleton. Well, what is it actually? Well, the technical term means an outer hard shell or structure that serves the purpose of protecting an inner soft body. Maybe you have heard about exoskeleton before, but this could give you a brief idea of what exoskeletons really mean. A lobster have hard shells and they're softer on the inside. And other arthropods also, like spiders or scorpions. So, yeah, this is a biological exoskeleton, but we also have man-made or powered exoskeletons. And these are what humans build so that they can increase our strength or also help us to move and assist our movements. And yeah, the most popular one, which is from sci-fi movies, again, from the movie Edge of Tomorrow, maybe most of you must have seen it. Well, we do have real-life counterparts of it, for example, the Hulk, which is developed by Esco Bionics. But Esco Bionics also make exoskeletons like these. Well, the second image is for exoskeletons in the military. They are used to increase the strength of soldiers. And the third image is for rehabilitation, to help patients, because not all people need superhuman capabilities. They just need to be able to walk again or learn how to walk again. But at the same time, we also have exoskeletons like these, the Ottobock passive exoskeleton, which is used in the industry for overhead working, like in this example here. Well, those four examples give us an idea between active and passive exoskeletons. Active exoskeletons are they are motorized, and they are motorized by actuators. So what that means is that we use motors to cause motion in the human limbs. And passive exoskeleton simply relies on the material science behind the different parts of the exoskeleton to hold certain position, like in the last image. Well, our main topic today will be about active exoskeletons. Now that you have an idea about what exoskeletons are in general, the main question that we should ask ourselves is, why should we use exoskeletons in healthcare? Well, let's start with an example. Suppose someone has injured their knee while they were playing football, or they actually had an accident, they fell down and they hurt their knee. They will have to be able to walk again, and they have to go through a process called rehabilitation, which means they have to learn how to walk again, and they cannot do that by themselves. They will need the help of health experts or physical therapists or also physiotherapists. And in this case, they make use of parallel bars, like in the image here. And there are lots of processes involved behind it, mostly from the technical side, but I got a glimpse of this. For example, the physical therapists, they will have to give commands to the patient, and also they will have to observe visual and auditory feedbacks from the patient to see if they are really improving in their motions or not. And there are lots of other limitations. For example, it's difficult without the use of sensors to know if the patient's muscle are actually causing too much strain, or if they're not doing the efforts that's required to make them heal again. So in this case, then, we make use of exoskeletons. Exoskeletons, they don't aim to replace completely the physical therapist, but they want to assist the patients to learn to walk again. And in this case, you see it's the same setting. They are both patients. They are walking with parallel bars. And in the second image, you can see the patient is equipped with an exoskeleton. And the physical therapist is controlling those exoskeletons with buttons and a controller behind the patient. And it's also deciding the range of the motion of the patient, and it's also getting feedback, how fast the patient is moving, which muscles are being activated too much, which one is being activated less. And is the person improving in his motion, yes or not? Well, there are lots of other potential uses. For example, we have cerebral palsy, which is a case where children are affected with muscle strain and they cannot control the extension and flexion of their knee. And also, the one that I've explained is knee injuries. But you also have partial paralysis, where, for example, after a stroke, a person, they cannot really control their muscles anymore, and they have to learn to walk again. To give a bit more concrete data to this, I would like to present some data about what researchers have gathered. This one is from the muscle called vastus lateralis. It is the most powerful muscle in the upper leg. And in this case, they made some analysis with patients with cerebral palsy. They were mostly children. And as you can see here, they attached the exoskeleton with the patients, and they measured the EMG signals from the patient. EMG simply stands for electromyography or neuromuscular feedback, which is simply how much the muscle is being activated. We place electrodes on the surface of the skin, and we get feedback from it to see in terms of voltage if the person is putting too much effort on their muscles, then you will get higher voltage levels. If there's not much effort, then it will be lower. And as you can see in this example, in the beginning, the black line, shows the EMG signal without the use of an exoskeleton. And it's much higher compared to the red line, which is the EMG signal with the use of an exoskeleton assist. And of course, we can already see the benefits here. What is happening is the patients, in the beginning, they were having too much muscle strain and they could not walk again. So they could not walk properly, as you would say. But with the exoskeleton on, they actually get this assist that will make them walk more smoothly and maybe gain their normal walking pattern again. And in this case, they did find out that there was a 35% decrease in the muscle strain when they were using the exoskeleton. Well, now we talked about exoskeletons, and we also talked about them in healthcare, where they could be used and how they are used. I could also mention some examples before we continue. In this case, I would like to mention two very reputable exoskeletons. The HAL, which is developed by Cyberdyne from Japan. They have been in development since the 1990s, and now you can see they have created a really sleek exoskeleton that people can wear and walk, and also what they claim is that people can learn to walk again without the supervision of health experts, which is a really big claim. And you also have Rewalk here, which serves the same purpose, but this is something that you will see really commonly with exoskeletons, that people are using crutches to walk, because if you're walking outside, exoskeleton can topple you over, it can make you lose your balance and you will just fall. So crutches are here to help us when we're walking in an open environment. Well, you're looking at this, so you're thinking like, they might look complex, but I can break it down for you. Basically, they are like any other device. For example, smartphones, they will have a battery that's powering them, and they will have a controller or a microprocessor, like in computers. But they also have sensors, like EMG that I have mentioned before, that's reading the muscle activity. And they also have actuators that's causing the motion. And now you must be thinking, if they have been in development for so long, why is it not really becoming more common? Why is it not cheaper? I don't know if you can estimate the cost of one HAL exoskeleton, how much it would cost. It's in the order of the $80,000 US just for this equipment here. And we have all those things. We can build the same thing in our university with a much cheaper budget. So yeah, why is it still so expensive and limited to so many people? We have development in artificial intelligence where we can analyze the gait of patients and we can cluster them and decide like, yeah, now they want to start moving, now they want to stop moving, or now they want to sit or squat. And also we have improved and better sensors and actuators where they are much smaller in size. We can embed them in really small, compact designs. And same for the actuator, they are more efficient and they can work for longer hours. And the most important is additive manufacturing. Nowadays, you can just go on your computer and make any design you want, do some simulation with it, and the next day you already have it in your hand. That was not possible in the past. So yeah, well, what we have analyzed is that besides the cost factor, there are other limiting factors. For example, there's still something that you have to wear on and then put it on and then, yeah, walk with it. So it still has a weight to it. Those exoskeletons, they weigh up to 23 kilograms. And they're also cumbersome, like I said. If you're wearing it and you have to walk around with it, it's not easy. So it's not meant for everyone. At the same time, there's the interaction that's involved between the exoskeleton and the humans. We have to make sure that they are safe. And before we do that, of course, this is what digital health is about. We are not only looking at the technological aspect that, yeah, we have so many advances, so we can build anything and make it work. We have to understand the human body first. And yeah, after we have done all this, then we can make sure that the acceptability will be increased. So more people will be willing to use it, and more people will be willing to make use of exoskeleton to help them walk again if they have any kind of illness. So yeah. So with this then, I would like to talk about our own project that we have done, Project Forces, and yeah, just give you a brief idea of the different steps and challenges and the progress of how the development of an exoskeleton really is. To start with, we had to analyze the human body or the human anatomy. And in this case, we focused mostly on the lower limb. So yeah, there was not that much complication because our main focus was on the knee. And the knee is a single one-axis joint. Of course, it's not that simple, but I'm trying to simplify it here, compared to the hip, which has 3 axes, and the ankle, which has 2 axes. So not only that, we also had to gather data about the different sizes of human legs and how the profile is in the frontal plane if you're looking at the human body. So after we had done all this information, of course, there are lots of steps involved with it. For example, we use 3D scanning, or you can just use dimensional data, or yeah, and so on. We developed a CAD model that would fit perfectly with the profile of the human leg. So we thought that if something fits really nice and snugly with, for example, when you're wearing your clothes, it's fits suitably on you, then it wouldn't be much of a problem. But then this small piece here is not strong enough to hold the forces that exoskeletons exert. So the next step was to make it stronger. And by making it stronger, of course, it became bigger. And when it became bigger, it uses more material and becomes heavier. So we had to make sure in this point that it's more lightweight and has less of a bulky design. So we use something called topology optimization, where the excess material, topology optimization is a software-based approach where the excess material inside the exoskeleton is removed, and we only place material where forces are acting. So yeah, this actually is all done by the computer, and we have to just redefine the design so we get something like this. And yeah, then our final step is, of course, if you look at just the frame here, you will see the frame is different compared to the first design that we had done, which was sleeker and nicer and really neat. And this one now, it's bulkier again because it has to support the forces. And of course, this one has the actuator connected to it. So yeah. Again, in the topic about the body, the human anatomy, the next step we also had to do was to analyze the movement of the anatomy itself. And one way to do this is by motion capture. Or if you're looking at it from a computer simulation model, we refer to it as multi-body simulation, or MBS. It's just analyzing how the different links of the human body, they move when the person is doing predefined motion, for example, when they're walking or sitting or squatting. And how do we do this is we place markers on the person or on the patient that we want to observe the motion of. And for our case, we use a system called OptiTrack. And the output was just something like this. So we get like a skeletal design, which shows the different muscles inside the human body and the skeletons and how precisely they are moving when the person is doing those predefined motions. What's more interesting is that we also can gather sensor data from it. For example, we can place EMG sensors on that person, and we will find out what kind of muscle activity is going when he's walking, and also other sensors like IMU sensors or torque sensors. And this has lots of benefits at the same time, because we can also then use the same model, or in other terms it's also referred to as gait analysis or gait models, to apply it to our exoskeleton so that we can use it when the person is walking. And we also get more data about how the human body works. So this we will use in our next step, which is the development of the actuator. The actuator, again, is another component that will, no matter how hard you try to make it really sleek and small, it will still be really bulky, because motors, as you can see, DC motors that work with current, they are never small. And if they are small, they won't provide enough power to move it. So what we had to do is we had to try and find a way to make a really compact actuator. So that's one of the things, the biggest challenges. And in our case, we use 3D printing, so we could actually decide where to place the different components and then make it really, how do you say, tailor-made for the different actuators and different components that we were using. And second is about the safety features. To give you a perspective, exoskeletons that are used for the military, they can provide forces of as high as 200 Newton meters. And it's a technical term, but again, to give you another perspective, this is equivalent of you holding 70 kilograms with just your forearm, which is quite high. So those machines, they can do that. Now imagine I asked you now that, you can wear this on your leg. Would you trust me? I don't think you would. So what we have to find is a way to be able to control that. And of course, we need controllers, and we can limit the motor capacity. But this still raises so many safety concerns, because you never know when those things can malfunction. Well, we'll come back to this later. Another key aspect was to make the actuator back drivable. What does that mean is that when a person is wearing it, they should be able to walk while they're using it, even when the actuator is not active, in case of an emergency or something happens. So the motor can move the limbs, and the person also, they can move the motor back. Well, these are the basic features. Now, two special features about our actuator is that, again, with our multi-body simulation and the analysis that we have done, we've also past researchers. Those involve MRI scans and dissections from a really long time ago about the human knee joint. We found that there are two ligaments inside the knee that helps the motion of the knee. So it's not a single pivot and it's just rotating, but it's a joint where the center of rotation is shifting. So we try to adapt this to our actuator, and this is done because we try to replicate the two ligaments inside the knee, which is the PCL and the ACL, for people who know, and they connect the tibia and the femur together. And in this case, we got a model like this when we adapted it to our actuator with the shifting center of rotation. And this is another 3D model of it where we did the simulation to see if it was working well. Now, the biggest other challenge was that it had to be able to work well with a human. So again, we used our famous multi-body simulation and motion capture to align the axis of rotation with that of the human knee. Again, so there's so many steps before we can place it on a person to ensure that when they are bending their knee, the actuator is bending together. Well, the last but not the least important part is the human-robot interaction. So now we have a frame, we have an actuator. What do we need is something that will make the exoskeleton move. So we need feedback from the human itself. Again, we have EMG sensors, like I've mentioned. We have the gait model that we can obtain from the multi-body simulation. But this is not enough, because the EMG sensor will trigger the gait model and tell the exoskeleton to move one step forward, but what if the person doesn't want to move forward, or there's some strain that's stopping them? So what happens then is we can also use a manual control. And in this case, what we do is the physiotherapists, they will have a controller in their hand when they can decide how much to move the person's limb and so on. But now we want to talk about mobile application, something that's unsupervised by the physiotherapist, and he can walk also around in the outside environment. So what do is we try to use a sensor-based and AI approach that, well, it goes a bit further from just using gait model to manual control, because in this case, we're totally relying on the sensors that are connected to the human body. And how do we do that? We just don't use only one sensor, we use multiple sensors, which is what we are doing with our project. So we use one IMU sensor, which is measuring the acceleration of the leg, a torque sensor, which is measuring the force interaction between the person and the exoskeleton, and vice versa, and also the famous EMG sensor. All those are combined together. Well, at first it was a simple algorithm, but this doesn't suffice it, so we have to use neural networks, machine learning. In our case, we had one project where we used convolutional neural networks, so we could form clusters and define the motions that are being run by the sensors. And finally, then we can control the actuator. So, yeah, now the results, as you can see, this is the exoskeleton as a complete model, 3D model on a CAD design. There's the backplate that has all the control units. The control units actually consist of the controller, which is taking data from the sensors and then processing it, doing all the artificial intelligence part and everything, and then it's sending the signals to the output actuator. So yeah, this is just 2 videos that we have made before about the actuator without about the exoskeleton without the actuator being active. And as you can see, it's back drivable, which means that the person can walk even when the actuator is not active. And the movement was, again, after you align the axis of rotation of the knee with that of the actuator, the movement should be as natural as it can feel. In this case, we did not really test it with so many people because of safety concerns. So there was me and 4 other people who tested it, and we could say that the results were satisfactory. And again, it's also because of the weight distribution of the actuator and the exoskeleton, and also how well it aligned to our leg. This one is also a test stand that we have built. Of course, before we can test it on humans, I mean, besides me here as a guinea pig testing it for the first time, before we can test it on actual patients, we have to make sure that all the sensors are working properly. So we use a test stand like this, for example, that has a fake dummy model on the side, and it contains all the input with the sensors. And yeah, we make sure that no matter what happens, that the system doesn't just go out of control. This is the very first time I tested it. I was really scared myself, and I had a manual input, and I had asked someone else to keep their hand on the emergency button, so in case anything goes wrong. And yeah, it was successful, and I could move my leg. So yeah, again, these are all the challenges that we go through to develop just one exoskeleton. So we can also then now justify the price of it if you consider that if you have to sell it and make it commercial, you have to clear so many safety regulations. So it's not a simple job to just build something and give it to someone and say, like, now you can use it for rehabilitation. It works well. So I hope I gave you an insight. This was all about my presentation for the exoskeletons, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Adherence, for this very impressive talk. Thank you.
Yeah, welcome.
We're a little bit, stay here for a second. Yeah. I have a little bit of a time, but I think we do have a little bit of time for questions. So are there urgent questions here in this room? Please, the microphone is coming.
I had a question about the battery. How long does it work and make sound when it's empty? Or?
Yes, actually, in terms of safety, we have implemented this. We have a battery management system also. Of course, I did not go too much into all the details. And battery management system is something that's really important for exoskeletons. So when it's going below a certain level, we have to notify the user so they can be aware of this and stop it. And in our case, from what we calculated, it should work between 3 to 4 hours, because it has to supply high power to the motor, but it depends. If it's using less power, then it could go double that time, for example. But on average, it's 3 to 4 hours of usage. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm allowed to have one question today.
Yeah.
Thank you for this very impressive talk. I was wondering about how many, could you give us insights in the time,
how long are you developing this and how many people are developing this?
That would be interesting to talk about. The project actually started around 2 years ago, and we started with different campuses of the Deggendorf Institute of Technology. So I would say it started as a student project. So at first there were like 4 researchers working on it, but each researcher had like 1 student doing their master thesis. I myself did my master thesis on the actuator part of it. So yes, that's why I know lots about it. So I would say, yeah, it has been ongoing for around 1.5 years now, with 4 different campuses, 1 focusing on the mechatronics side, 1 focusing on the structure, 1 on the sensors, and now we have 1 campus focusing on the healthcare side of it. Yeah.
Thank you, really interesting presentation, but I have one question concerning really bringing the things to market. As I said in the beginning, okay, yes, we think that we can do all the processes, but I think now in the last sentence you just said was the 4 campuses are doing. Mm-hmm. Who is doing the business side? And so how do you have someone involved who is going really trying to bring it to the market? And when you think, okay, how could the process then look like of having it individualized, printed, etc.? And where would you end up there with the costs?
Currently, actually, this is because it's still in the prototyping phase. So we're still reaching out to people to companies and other people who want to fund the project further, so we can continue and develop it in more commercial ways. And of course, like you mentioned, the most critical part of it is the ethics. So this is another part that we are looking forward right now that we have to work on too. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks again for this talk and answering the questions. And we're moving on to the next topic. We're circling back to, another round of applause for the speaker, please. Yes, we're circling back to data-driven healthcare. And when it comes to that topic, there is kind of an elephant in the room. And that is, how about patients' rights? How about dealing with ethics and data? What are the things we have to bear in mind when it comes to that? And talking about that, we have Saija Inkeroinen. This talk will be given remotely, so we will see her on the screen. Saija Inkeroinen from the Department of Nursing Science at the University of Turku.
Thank you, and I hope you hear me well. So I am a PhD candidate in the Department of Nursing Science in University of Turku. And my topic is patients' rights in digital healthcare. And unfortunately, due to COVID, I can't be there in person, but let's do this digitally then. So I'm gonna go on with this presentation by answering a few questions. First, about what are patients' rights? What are we talking about when we talk about the rights? And when I talk about patients' rights, I mean all the people requiring care and seeking or using healthcare services. And then what are the patient knowledge-related rights and what are these in digital healthcare? And I would like to activate you a little bit with this quote. Knowledge itself is power. This is credited to Francis Bacon, and it's not originally related to healthcare or patients' knowledge, but I think this could be useful for you to reflect throughout this presentation. So please keep this in mind. So first, what are patients' rights? The origin of the rights comes actually from the German, and originally it has had something to do with a rule that entitles us to expect or allows us to do. And that originally translated from Latin that covered right and duty, and it was associated with law, not something that people are born with as we understand the human rights nowadays. And I use the definition of a right by beyond and Childress, which is a justified claim to something or and against another party. But as you can see, there are many different definitions and discussion going around the definition of rights. But what we can say about the rights is that the theory of rights is one of the most important theories for expressing the moral point of view. And it is serving as a source of protection. And keep this in mind too. And rights can be divided into legal and moral rights, and today we are going to talk both of them. One thing that I like to highlight from the rights theory is that rights are correlative to duties. And what this means is that if patients have, for example, right to know about their care, then someone else has a correlative duty to provide the information or patient educate or support the knowledge. And right now I'm looking at the healthcare professionals, healthcare providers, digital healthcare developers, educators, and so on. A very brief and simplified history of patients' rights. We can already interpret some of the traces of patients' rights from the ancient Greek, but the clear turning point was in World War II, when the United Nations declared the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. As we all know, it was part of a response to the World War II, where patients experienced horrible and unethical treatments and experiments in Nazi Germany without their knowledge or their consent. And then we jump to the 60s and 70s when we had these rights movements. Patients' organizations were very active in promoting patients' rights, and there were some law cases, especially in the United States, that shaped the patients' rights discussion or the talk about them. And also the principle of respecting patients' autonomy became a central one in healthcare instead of the paternalistic conduct. And in the 90s, we could see national level this emphasis on laws. We had some specific patient rights laws, and also like international level, we had like a strategical emphasis for patients' rights. So my topic today is the knowledge and information related rights. So what are these? And again, I would like to remind you of this knowledge is power thought. So why, if we all have already human rights, why do patients need particular rights? And the reason for that is, for example, that there is informational imbalance between patients and healthcare professionals. When you think about the knowledge that professionals have compared to patients, it's very different. And this can create power structures in care that can place patients in a vulnerable position. And if you remember, the rights were there to protect them. I like this division of patients' rights into 3 domains: social rights, individual rights, and consumer-based rights. And it covers all the knowledge and information-related rights. They are like cross-cutting rights between these. And also the rights are a little bit overlapping with each other, but I'll try to make it as clear as possible. So let's go through these domains. So first, the patient's rights the social rights of patients include the right to know about the patient's rights and other entitlements. The individual rights, I just put some of the central ones for this topic here. Right to know about one's own health, which is my topic in my doctoral research. Right not to know, related to that. And then some other information-related rights that we soon cover in more detail. And then the consumer-based rights is about the right to know about the services. So it's about to know the healthcare right to know about the healthcare provider, health services, how to use them, the quality, safety, and the prices of the care. Okay, so what about digital healthcare? And first, why should we even care about them in digital healthcare? Well, we have the World Health Organization's global strategy on digital health, and it says clearly that digital health should benefit people in a way that is ethical, safe, secure, reliable, equitable, and sustainable. And it is quite obvious that patients' rights contribute to all of those. Also, the purpose of the strategy is to empower patients. And again, if we go back to the thought that knowledge is power, and we can see the power word in that empowerment. So the idea is that with knowledge, patients can be empowered, or the empowerment can be supported with knowledge, making these knowledge and information-related rights very relevant to this strategy. And also in the guiding principle 3, they specify this right perspective, saying that the strategy promotes the protection of people and population against human rights violations. And what they protect, they have, the literature has identified several perspectives that are important when we talk about knowledge and information-related rights. So these are the autonomy and control in relation to the personal information, informed consent, and informational privacy, confidentiality, and protection of personal information. The patient's right to know or right to be informed should be understood as a cornerstone of all of the rights. But let's look specifically what are these rights that are relevant to digital healthcare. So in social rights, which was about the right to know about the patient's rights, we have in this WHO strategy this proposed long-term action, which is raising awareness of patients' rights. And it is, the purpose of that is to advocate people-centered health system enabled by digital health. And when we move on to individual rights, there are several ones. For example, this patient's right to know information collected about them, and it's related to this idea that patients should control their own data. And this includes right to access one's own health data, and right to know whether the data concerning them is being processed, and if it is, the right to access such data and to obtain a copy of the data. The right to protection of personal information, privacy, and confidentiality was a little bit talked about today already, and it's probably familiar to all of us because probably all of us are using technology, but I just like to remind that all personal health information is always sensitive data. So this is crucial among the patient's rights. And patients have the right to informed consent, and in the context of digital healthcare, again, one of the WHO's strategy, they have this proposed long-term action to raise awareness of the concept of dynamic consent, which is often used in digital healthcare. So that should be one way, again, to support the advocate in the people-centered health system. And finally, the consumer-based rights, which was rights about the health services. This is related to artificial intelligence. So patients have right to obtain information on the reasoning underlying AI data processing operations applied to them, including the consequences of such reasoning. So as a conclusion, patients' rights are seen as a subset of human rights, making them great importance. And the rights serve as a source of protection, but also they can be supporting the patient empowerment. And these knowledge and information-related rights have great relevance to digital healthcare, so please be aware and follow the current guidelines and strategies. References and my contact info, please, I would love to continue this discussion with you, so please contact me if you would like to continue this.
Thank you very much. Thank you also for the contact information so that everybody who wants to know more about this can get in contact with you. Are there any questions right now, right here? I don't think there are, and I don't think there are questions from the stream. So thanks again, Saija Inkeroinen. And we're moving on to the final presentations, to the second student pitch series of short talks. First of all, I would like to welcome Michaela Hüfken and Luciano Jung. And they are bringing up a topic we have not heard about yet, which is sleep. All the persons we saw this afternoon were awake now. Let's see what we can say about sleep. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's start by talking about mental health first. The influence mental health has on our life experiences and on our experiences is huge. But you know what else is huge? It's the number of people that are actually suffering from mental health conditions worldwide. The latest number is nearly 1 billion people. 1 billion people worldwide. And experts agree that there's one thing that mental health conditions can be negatively impacted by, and that can also be a symptom of many mental health conditions. And that one thing is bad sleep. And then right when we're trying to look for help, we have to wade through endless amounts of information to find help for our bad sleep. Let's see. 8 tips for better sleep at night, or experts reveal secrets to better sleep, or 5 tips to get a good night's sleep. But to be honest with you, and tell me if you disagree, it shouldn't be a big secret on how to sleep good at night, or it shouldn't be this overwhelming to get the information that you need. So how can we solve this problem of getting the help and the information in an easy way?
Well, let me give you a solution. Meet Sam the Sloth. He's the sloth that needs more than 16 hours of sleep every day, so he wants to have good sleep. And in the end, he needs your help to get this. So Sam guides you through different scenarios, gathering to the point that he can give you an easily gained experience based on sleep knowledge by showing you real-life experiences, and you can help Sam to gather more sleep knowledge. You can help Sam to get better sleep and gaining yourself a better sleep knowledge. He's giving you the opportunity to set your own goals and stay motivated, and thereby you can boost your own knowledge and master your sleep. But in the end, it should be possible to have fun with our app. So instead of scrolling through different parts of sleep on the internet, in the evening when you get brightened by light, we give you a gamified sleep solution with Sam the Sloth. Let me give you a short scenario example. Each scenario starts with Sam asking you for help or an advice. In this part, Sam asks you how can I feel better asleep in the evening. It continues by asking you questions about sleep, helping Sam to provide better sleep. And after getting more information, you can get at the end be rewarded from Sam for every right decision you made for him. So we want to give you an accessible, in a nutshell, want to give you an accessible educational sleep application that should empower you to care more about your sleep and therefore about your mental health. But Michaela, there are more than just us two in the sleep team, aren't they?
That's correct. And actually, all of us in the team have experienced sleep struggles before. And I am pretty sure that many of you have too, and have also experienced what this can mean for your mental health. And so we all want to have a good night's sleep, and we all want to take care of our mental health through that. And so we ask you to just make your mental health a priority and become a sleepyhead. And congratulations. By listening, thank you, by listening to our presentation, you just leveled up. But we also want to invite you to come to our booth later and ask us questions, and we're also happy to show you our prototype game. Thank you.
Thank you very much. What I said before the first series of student presentations is, of course, also true now. The people talking to you now will be available for further questions and will be there after this session. So don't rush away when this is finished right away, but maybe use the opportunity for a little bit more networking. Okay, so as the next speaker, I would like to welcome Lisa Šasnović from UAS Upper Austria, talking about inertial sensors and fall prevention in the elderly. Please.
Hello. Hello. If you're surprised that my image doesn't match the one in the announcement, I'm not Lisa. But despite the fact that this is a digital meeting, Lisa had an analog breakdown of her engine, of her car engine on the way here. Oh. And she's stuck in Amstetten. So I try to improvise and briefly present what she is working on. Which button do I push? Okay. What we work on is on fall prevention. Fall prevention is something that's becoming more and more relevant because we have an aging society, and as we get older, falls get more frequent and the consequences get more frequent. For example, in Linz alone, 2 people get brought to hospital every day who have fallen and who have fractured their femur. And of those 2 people, 1 person never leaves the bed again. So falls are very expensive, and they're also the probably primary reason why people lose their independence. People don't want to let their parents stay at home alone when their parents have had 2 or 3 serious falls because they don't want to have the responsibility. So Lisa and I have teamed up with Harald Jansenberger, a sport therapist in Linz, who has spent the last 15 to 20 years working on fall prevention. And he's come up with a training program that really works, that really reduces the number of falls. And we want to see how we can use technology in order to contribute something to that program. Now, you might think using technology in order to measure something that happens with patients is trivial, but when you work with patients, nothing is trivial. Let me give you one example. I submitted a grant application together with the University of Witten, where we wanted to measure the gait in people who were chronically depressive. Because you might know if you're depressed and if you take a pencil and put it between your teeth, for a minute, you will feel better afterwards. The reason is you activate your smiling muscles, and this in a feedback improves the mood. And similarly, it has been shown that when you walk actively, it makes you feel better. So we wanted to use that with depressed people. And the problem is when you work with patients, everything has to be submitted to an ethics board. So in our submission to the ethics board, we even chose an inertial sensor that was medically approved. However, what we did not take into account, this sensor that we used, it's the Valledo sensor from Hokoma, was approved for back problems, and we wanted to measure it for gait properties of depressed people. So it was not the intended use. The ethics board rejected our application, and we couldn't do the study. So as soon as you work with patients, it becomes non-trivial, even using the technology that we do. With Jansenberger, we get around it by working with people who are not patients yet. Those are people who try to prevent falls. So we are in the prevention area. We do not work with patients, and thereby we get around working with standard sensors. Since his program has proven very successful, he tries to distribute it throughout the German-speaking area, and the bottleneck in distributing the program, as has been pointed out previously by our very nice talk by the first speaker, is the experts who provide that training, about that knowledge. Now, we try to make the training digital or more digital by providing measurable quantities that can quantify how fall prone the person is, can quantify the improvement of the training, and we do so by using it to make the training more interactive and to get numbers on those training data that we can use later on in order to see who has improved how much. The problems that come up are essentially twofold. One is handling the data. Here, we don't work with patients yet, but one of the I dare say, the biggest bottleneck in working with patients is how to then handle data. Many of the sport therapists, physiotherapists are not very technology prone, and for them to provide a secure backend that fulfills all the regulatory requirements is very difficult. So the handling of the data is one problem. And the second problem that is not to be underestimated is the structuring of experiments. If you want to use well-defined movements, exercises for quantification, you have to stick to certain paradigms. But in physiotherapy, you gain most by pushing people to the limits. So on the one hand, physiotherapists try to stay flexible so they can always work with a patient in such a way that he or she improves most. On the other hand, in order to get data that are comparable and that also allow you feedback on the progress, the data have to adhere to a very strict protocol. And if you have those data, that makes them immensely valuable in the long run, because if you have those data combined with additional information, for example, the falls, non-falls, you can use those data for the more accurate prediction of what's happening. So that's essentially what I wanted to tell you. We are at the first step. We are trying to work with proven practices, digitize them, and then use that as a basis to make it truly digital. Thank you for your attention, and sorry that Lisa couldn't be here in person.
Thank you. And sorry for getting the name wrong, I just didn't know. Okay, so we're moving on to our final talk today. Sophie Kutschi and Mona As, I hope this is correct now, will be talking to us about, well, actually an educational video game. I'm very much looking forward to that, so please.
Good afternoon, everyone. Imagine you enter a patient room, and the first thing you see, a doctor in the room touching the patient's foot, an infectious wound with his bare hands. In addition to that, you try to find the medical report of the patient. It's not there. Plus, there is medication lying on the table. The patient has gotten it. He shouldn't have gotten it in the first place. Sounds like a nightmare? It is. These mistakes and many, many more have happened in one way or another. We are a group of 6 from different medical healthcare professions. Each of us has experienced these mistakes or other ones that have made due to a lack of a team spirit and a lack of communication, things that could have been avoided easily. So this was our motivation while we developed an educational tool for students to tackle this exact problem. Our team consists of a dietitian, a radiographer, 2 clinical engineers, a physiotherapist, and a pharma representative. Well, the problems nowadays, poor interprofessional collaboration leads to job dissatisfaction among team members. They tend to quit more easily. They're less motivated to get organizational things done, things that are crucial in a hospital, and a decrease in patient safety itself. So our prototype has various goals. First of all, the students have the possibility to test their knowledge in a safe environment where the patient himself or herself is not harmed. And they have the opportunity to learn more about the skills, the knowledge and the competences of their colleagues or other healthcare members. Yes, and another one of the most important goals is to decrease the risk of patient harm. So our prototype was built for students to work together from different departments as a team and to solve built-in mistakes in our prototype. The mistakes are in pictures and in medical reports that we provide them, and they have to find the mistakes, the built-in mistakes in those as well. Now I will hand it to Sophie, and she will give you further information about our prototype.
All right, so for us, it was rather important to include as many health professionals as we thought we were capable of. So we decided, okay, we'll first start creating different scenarios where health professionals will have to work with other health professionals as well with the patient. So we were thinking like, okay, what is usually the team in a very normal hospital setting that works together the most? And also what team would have the most contact with the patient, him or herself? So we have decided, okay, we'll be going with 4 different health professions: the doctor, the nurse, the physiotherapist, and the dietitian. So when you first start our game, you will be able to choose one of said 4 professions. To be able to play the game, since this is a team player, multiplayer, you will need 1 player for each profession for sure. Our goal, or basically your goal as the player, is to find all of those hidden mistakes that we've hidden in set scenarios and report them. Now, we will be giving you different documentations as well to, first of all, aid you with this process, but also to make it a little bit more difficult because we put different mistakes in those documentations as well. So basically, this on the right side, you can kind of see we didn't make it that easy when you go over the cursor to see the mistakes, because we want teamwork and we want interdisciplinary action. We want the team players to be able to talk to each other and explain, this is a mistake because this and that. So what we basically developed is something called a serious game. Why exactly are serious games such a great educational tool? Because, as my colleague already said, players are able to practice managing and adapting to complex and unexpected situations they might find themselves in real practice in the field. But they have a safe environment where they can practice in. Basically, as my colleague said, whatever they do, even if it's wrong, even they make mistakes, nobody really gets harmed. Furthermore, as I already said, it is a fantastic educational tool. You can use it in universities, you can use it in different schools and nursing school, etc. Because pretty much it's rather accessible. Pretty much every school has a computer room where you can download it and play it. Our objectives, first and foremost, we want to increase patient safety. Because one of the biggest issues that reduces patient safety is miscommunication between the different parties that are involved in patient care. Furthermore, we want, of course, to test the knowledge and have the players know, okay, what's the correct usage of medical products and of medical procedures and techniques. We also want that everybody learns how to communicate properly, like not just talk, but also listen and understand what's happening and what's going on, so that everybody can present their own ideas and their knowledge. And finally, we want everybody to be able to avoid very common mistakes and also recognize common mistakes, and not necessarily only from their own health profession. Finally, thank you very much for your attention. However, before it's open networking, we are asking one little favor of those of you who have a technical background. Please pull out your phone and please pull out your camera and go over our QR code, because you will be redirected to a little survey. It really doesn't take a lot of time. It has like a couple questions only, but it would be really great for us to get your feedback specifically. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, so that concludes this series of presentations. I think it was really a lot of information for everybody, and I hope you learned something from that. I'm actually quite sure you learned a lot today. Well, I, as an outsider not doing research in this field, I'm incredibly impressed how many high-tech ideas from very, very different fields make our life better and make our health better. Just think, approximately 170 years ago, there was a young doctor in Vienna called Ignaz Semmelweis, and actually he was a doctor at one of the most prestigious medical clinics back then, and they had the highest standards available. And still, women back then at the General Hospital in Vienna died at an alarming rate after childbirth, and nobody really knew why. And it was a mystery, and people were thinking, well, maybe it's astrology, maybe the stars are just wrong. Semmelweis didn't believe that, and you probably know this story. He did his research, and he looked at possible reasons, and he found out, well, the reason was that young doctors were being trained and doing research on dead bodies, and nobody knew about hygiene back then. And so those young doctors, without washing their hands, went back from doing research on dead bodies to the clinic and dealt with the women in childbed there. And that's how these poor women got infected. So this was a time, and it's not so terribly long ago, at which people did not know what hygiene is, what bacteria is. Nobody knew what a virus is. They didn't even have electricity at the General Hospital back then. And since then, since this time, medicine and healthcare has been changed profoundly over and over again. And I do not believe that there is any other field other than healthcare and medicine which has so tremendously profited from each and every technological and scientific breakthrough that there is. Pick any science. We have biology, of course. We have chemistry. We have physics, from mechanics to quantum physics. All of those fields somehow found their way into the medical sciences. And that's also what we see today. Also the internet and apps and high-tech motors and actuators and sensors. All those great inventions somehow find their way into healthcare and somehow make our life better, make us live longer and better and healthier. And so you all should consider yourselves as part of a grand tradition, of this wonderful and great tradition of incorporating every bit of knowledge that science provides into very, very tangible results, into healthcare, into medicine, making our lives better. And congratulations for that, and thanks to everybody of you for that. I think you all should give each other a big round of applause. With that, I would like to conclude this event. It was a pleasure to be here and to be able to listen to all these talks. But remember, it's not over yet. There will be, again, time for networking. Please do make use of this time. I think there will even be ice cream. So if that doesn't convince you to stay here, I do not know what will. Big thank you to everybody who made this possible. Thanks to the technicians who had a difficult task here. Actually, I've been to lots of events like this here, but it's extremely rare that everything goes so smooth and is so well organized. So big thank you to the organizers and everybody who worked behind the scenes to make this possible. I hope you do a little bit of networking, maybe have another coffee or some ice cream, and make new friends, get to know new contacts, and then have a nice weekend. Thanks, and see you again at future events.